Hey guys, it's Mike G back here with Logical Raptors Fanatic. Yeah, as you can hear, maybe it's a little bit clearer. Got a new mic and stuff. No watermark, none of that stuff anymore. Trying to upgrade and develop. The same spirit our Raptors kind of love to have that development culture. I believe in that in life. Kind of, you always learning, you're always a student of things. You can never know everything. So I think always being open-minded and ready to kind of see different points is really good for development and stuff. So obviously I'm taking things in, trying to develop my YouTube skills here. Obviously, at first, it was a little bit rougher, but we're making way, and I promise that this isn't the end of the development, like our topic here today. And I want to thank all like the creators that kind of like inspire me, all the YouTube Raptors guys out there and gals that really kind of push the content. And obviously it's about the fans. I think the support of the fans and the real like love and passion for this team really supports and really pushes people to make some great Raptors content. And I want to let everyone know that I see that. I see the support. I see all that kind of good blessings and stuff. And I'm really engaged in trying to make things a little bit more of a like a different conversation around the Raptors and maybe raise the consciousness of every Raptors fan out there, maybe entertain some, we out here doing the Raptors grind, and it's all because of you guys and the support you give and everything that you kind of give back to this team and this energy and this kind of culture we have. I'm gonna go into it a little bit more. That's kind of a little drop on my deeper video, but I think I want to make that one a little bit longer, a little bit more in thorough depth. This one's more of like I want to show kind of like a new series, a new perspective that I like to tackle, like different things of looking at how things have progressed through the years and kind of study that part of it a bit. And I think today's subject is really interesting. Obviously, I'm going to start up doing some of these videos every so often when I feel like it's a really good time to do it. And I think this is the kind of the perfect time to do this one. So enjoy. All right. So Raptors developing value, I think, is just kind of like a look through how Rudy Gay kind of became Gary Trent Jr. and OG Anunoby. I know like not everyone's too familiar with everything that's kind of happened in the timeline, so I'm gonna just kind of go over a couple things and we're gonna look at some of the different things here. But I think it's really interesting how Masai really builds around his two main guys. Like I think obviously none it was when we traded away Rudy Gay, we were looking to give DeMar DeRozan a bigger role and kind of push Lowry into that leadership. I think that's when that conversation between Masai and Lowry happened, where they had that talk like, do you want to be a journeyman that bounces around the teams, or do you want to be like a 10 million, $20 million guy that really solidifies himself and builds a legacy for himself? And isn't just a journeyman and is an actual all-star and a champion and what he really ultimately wanted in the end. And I think obviously it went out it went really well for us and Masai and Lowry. So we're gonna take a look at how Masai kind of develops value through the years because I think that's a big perspective of how he likes to team build. I think every position is kind of an opportunity to have someone there. We add some coaching, we add some great leadership, we add some culture, sprinkle in some playing time, and well, sprinkle in more and more playing time, like you know what I mean. And eventually, hopefully, we'll see gains and returns in development of that player jumping different tiers of talent, right? You're looking at different guys. All right, so we'll get into it. First trade is Rudy Gay, Quinton Acey, and Aaron Gray for Patrick Patterson, John Salmons, Chuck Hayes, and Greivis Vasquez. So if we look here, when Masai came in, he had a team of kind of like misfits almost a bit with like Rudy Gay. We had a young DeMar DeRozan, uh, like middle of the road kind of Lowry. We had a bunch of different options and Mary Johnson at like power forward, and we had JV young, really young still. So it was an interesting team, and the way we came out of the gates, we were losing too many games for the tone that Masai wanted to set in that year. Like I remember watching some of the behind the scenes stuff of around this time and the beginning of the season. Masai was really pushing the fact that, man, these fans are so great. They're so passionate. They're so supportive. And we haven't even won anything yet. Like this is unacceptable. We need to start winning. We need to start changing things here. And I think that this trade really sent a shockwave through the team to kind of say, hey, this isn't just rhetoric here. I really mean what I say. We need to start winning. We need to start improving. We need to start building something here. So we'll look at his stats a bit. In the first season, we kind of had him. He played 33 games, started at 32. I think that season didn't go too well for us. He scored 19 points and he shot, shooting an okay clip, but I think he was stopping the ball movement a little bit more. He's more of a post turnaround kind of guy, like likes to break the defender down the way OG is kind of now a little bit. But I think also his defense was here and there, and I think like his free throws looked nice for us. But the year that he got traded, as we can see, like he was still scoring about the same. But I think some of his percentages went down a little bit here, as you can see. His three ball went up, which is really nice because I think they want Masai implemented a different type of strategy that year. Still taking like a lot of shots and playing a lot of minutes, but we weren't winning games. So I think Masai felt that we needed a trade. Rudy Gay is obviously an asset that that can be traded, and we got mainly Grievous Vasquez, but also Patrick Patterson as well, and John Simons and Chuck Hayes. I think Chuck Hayes brought some. He played a really big game, and he um he played like the last like couple minutes and made a huge defensive block, and it was really big, and it was kind of like the energy we were starting to build, like trying to bring guys in, trying to like kind of make it inclusive. I think that's a big part to kind of how Lowry changed his attitude around the whole team and being its leader, because I think after that conversation with Masai, I think he really recognized, okay, this guy means business. He looks like he wants to win. I want to win. Let's do this. Let's try this. Let's not let it blow up. And I think Lowry and DeRozan really took that mantra on of being the leaders of this team. And I think bringing in Patrick Patterson and Grievous Vasquez, I think both guys that Masai was familiar with before his time in Toronto, like around the league. Obviously, he was a scout for many years and stuff, so he's got an innate talent for the right guys, and he kind of understands what it takes to kind of get up there, and he knows the type of guys that are really willing to put in that work, put team first, family first. You know what I mean? That kind of style. All right, so let's take a look at Patrick Patterson. We kept him for like 4 years, 4 really good years actually. The first year, obviously, we didn't do too well in the playoffs. We got swept by the Wizards. And I think that year he was just more like coming into his own a bit, still 24, still kind of young, so still a decent prospect. Like he had some upside. Masai made a great trade, I feel, from going from 27-year-old Rudy Gay to 24-year-old Patrick Patterson. And I think ultimately he did look, he played a bunch of games for us. He didn't start too many because I think that it was more of a support. We needed to take Rudy off the starting lineup and bolster our bench a little bit to start picking up season wins. Because I think during the season, depth really matters. And then obviously talent and top side wins in the playoffs. But I think depth is really important to gain that seeding and start building something. So I think that was a great move for two depth pieces. And we'll continue to go through it. So this would be the next year that we played. Oh, actually, no, sorry. The first year we went 7 with Brooklyn. My bad. I was mixing up. This is the year we got swept by the Wizards, and we kind of didn't meet the same expectations we did the first year when we went 7 against Brooklyn. And I think that really set the tone for the next couple of years where this was kind of like, I think there's mirrors of this year and 2014 of how we're in a precipice here. We did all right. We showed a something in the playoffs. We showed some fight. We showed we're worthy to kind of be there. But this is the year we need to see it kind of take a step, or we could see maybe some changes on this team. I think Masai is really aggressive in that point when he sees a couple guys really showing that leadership and showing that style. He's not going to let any player stand in the way of the team's success, the organization's success. There's a lot of guys that are behind the scenes that really work on this stuff, like scouts and stuff that spend days and days in motels and on planes and stuff to find these guys. And I think when Masai came in, that was one of the first things I think his conditions of coming here were to build the 905 and to like invest a little bit more into in international scouting because I think he knew the landscape of Toronto. He understood what he was getting into and kind of what he has a vision for this team. And he's kind of took in the similar steps. It's always been in the same direction in my mind. It's hard to see sometimes when things go up and down. And obviously, the team itself is the team. But I think his plan and the problems he's kind of worked through the years have been really excellent decisions going forward, and it's kind of shown. And I want to kind of chart that a little bit here. So obviously, this year is the year we went to the Eastern Conference Finals, took the Cavs to 6 before they took the Warriors to 7 and won it. But this year, I think we kind of knew what he was, and I think his that's why his role kind of went down a little bit more. Same minutes, but I think we were playing him differently. I think we were playing him more as like an energy guy, kind of trying to defend more and stuff, and trying to push him into a different role. I think like his three ball has always kind of been nice. That corner three he's always had, but I think it wasn't it's interesting how he was hitting them, like, but in the more pressure times, I think he kind of missed more than he made. So it's really interesting how he kind of really developed with us. Obviously, we kind of saw he wasn't necessarily the guy, kind of a guy that popped. He was still definitely good, playable, and that's what it's about. I think getting playable with potential, and you add in that development, you add in that 905, you add in all that coaching and all that good stuff. And we're trying to increase his role, his minutes and stuff. And I think this is just one aspect that didn't work out, same way as the other example cases I'm going to show you. So we're going to go on to the next trade here. All right, so now we have the Grievous Vasquez trade, and it happened actually draft day. We did it on the day of the draft, so it was really interesting. We came out of that season where we kind of flopped in the playoffs, and we were looking for something different, I think. So we'll go through kind of Graves' Vasquez history with us. He was 27, 28 when we had him. He was mainly a bench piece, like a bench point guard. You can see that right here. He kind of got a bit more play in the second year, because that was the year we were kind of doing bad and we kind of hit this kind of roadblock. We hit the wall, as they say, where we kind of get figured out. And defensively, we're getting like stomped on. So our offense was still elite. Lowry and DeRozan were still carrying the load offensively, but I think defensively, we really kind of fell off in that season. We weren't the same that we were in the season where we took Brooklyn to 7. And I think coming into those playoffs, it was a different energy. But I think Gravis Vasquez wasn't kind of the issue. He was more like a positive off the bench. We had him play some decent minutes, obviously, like 2024. And I think Milwaukee at that time were looking for a more steadier point guard. They had like Giannis playing like point guard kind of at the time and all this kind of craziness that they were trying to do. And so they wanted a more stable wing force. So they pretty much traded the second round pick they had that year, which was 46, and owned by the Bucks, yeah, and it was Norman Powell, and that was kind of the actual trade plus a first. So the immediate effect of the trade, we got Vasquez for Norman Powell, but we kind of had Terrence Ross too, so it was interesting how Norman Powell came in. His first year, I think we used him in the G League, so you can see obviously his games played wasn't as high because we rotated him in through the G League that year. It was the first year of the G League that we had Raptors 905, the inaugural season. We were kind of testing the waters with that. And I think Norman Powell was a great sport about going down there and really working on his game. Obviously, you can see like he wasn't shooting a great volume of threes that he was known for later on. I think that corner three kind of had it a bit. He was always a solid, really, really great jump shooter, had really great bounce in his legs, and I think that really showed. But I think his IQ in the mid range kind of shows here. He was take his mid range wasn't as kind of really, really well, because I think 45 is usually where the mid range is, like that's where that's kind of solid and kind of league. And I think obviously it showed like he didn't have much playmaking. Oh, sorry, that's his free throw stat. But eh, like yeah, so yeah, his assist doesn't have much playmaking, like I said. Like, okay, so when I kind of jumped the gun there a bit, it's because I know who Norman Powell is, and I think when you kind of see a play and understand how to read basketball, the stats kind of dictate that after. So it's like it's almost a restructuring of that, like reinforcing that thought with the stats. But if you see it on the court, even if you can't tell what it was happening in stats, you might be able to tell it's good still, but just not being able to explain it. So that's why I kind of jumped the gun there with assists. But yeah, low assists, and we knew it stayed low. So that's obviously why I kind of like knew that already. His rebounds were interesting. Like defensively, obviously, he as a guard, we were holding him back. Dwayne Casey liked his guards kind of getting the ball immediately and them pushing the ball up, and wouldn't like the forwards kind of pushing any of the balls up. He didn't trust anyone kind of dribbling it like that in the court. He thought maybe the guards would press too much and steal the ball off them, and or he didn't feel confident in their ability to do that, or that was just a scheme he likes to kind of implement. But obviously the first year he didn't score as much, right? So we traded Vasquez, which was a decent player, better than Norman Powell obviously the first year, but I think they saw him in that year's like draft. They brought him to come work out. He had a great workout. I know that he had a legendary workout that kind of cemented the Raptors kind of wanting him. And so I think the pick came too, but that's obviously a bigger piece of the value. And I think even when Masai called Gravis Vasquez, he's like, "Man, honestly, you've been traded to the Bucks. They just wanted you, man. They paid they paid a lot for you, man. And I think that was just kind of like a sign of respect. Like, you're a great player, you deserve what you get in this league, kind of. And I think the Bucks knew who you were and wanted you. And I think it was like it wasn't like, oh, you're traded, go to this team. It was kind of different and interesting. So he felt that this was great value. And obviously, we could tell that's some great value. But let's continue with Norm Powell. Obviously, that year, he had a great first series against Indy, man. We called them like that slam, man. Woof. I remember that highlight where he smoked it. Woof. And we knew the man had hops and he was a wicked dunker that year. And I think the next year, like him being there for that run, that 16 run, really helped him develop into a better player. He came into that winning culture like when we started that. Like, so I think that's when we turned the corner kind of. This is the season we kind of turned the corner completely into like a more solid winning team. So it's really interesting how he kind of came into that and was able to be developed. So we'll continue on. Obviously, we know this season didn't end too well. We got swept in the second round by LeBron. But I think that year he was still more of like a bench guy, still getting his minutes kind of up and down a bit. I think Dwayne Casey, obviously, he didn't I don't know. He didn't believe in him as much because of his defensive like mishaps from time to time. I think like he's a good pressure guard, but sometimes he can make mistakes that kind of leave everyone out there. And I think we were trying to push him to shoot above the arc a little bit more this year, and you can obviously see his three ball went down. So I think that's obviously why his minutes kind of went down. Also, we've seen the more minutes Norm gets, the better and more in rhythm he is. So it's like obviously we know what happened and kind of what happened. So it's really interesting. He improved his like dunk package. I think his shot selection got better. He wasn't able to go off in the mid range, but he was a great slasher. So he was always getting to the rack, getting those nice freaking dunks like right there because he has a great standing vert. Like he has a really great standing vert and reach, so he can like dunk right off any kind of position. So it's really interesting. He improved that. We can see his numbers went up, his volume went up. We see that. So free throws obviously like have been consistent. He's a guard. He's always been a kind of like a great shooter in that sense. So his rebounds, all right. So yeah, mainly the same, stayed about the same. His assists stayed about the same. I think this year he got a bigger role, obviously in the run it back year before Tampa. He got a bigger role and he was actually making headway. I think obviously you can see 28 minutes per game. We needed him once Kawhi and Danny Green left, and he was kind of like it was the rotation of Lowry, Fred Van Vliet, and Norman Powell, and we kind of decided Fred Van Vliet to start, but he did get his chance. So I think that's where it kind of we made the decision. He's 26. We kind of waited long enough to see if he could really become that kind of starter shooting guard for us, and he didn't really kind of show that fully. So I think ultimately his role was seen as a bench guy, and I think that's ultimately what led to our next trade. But OG, let's talk about what happened with his kind of drafting and acquiring. So, in addition to Norman Powell, so we pretty much replaced Greivis Vasquez for Norman Powell, kind of. But then we also got an additional pick. And this pick was actually kind of valuable because it was two spots better than our own. We had the 25th, yeah, 25th pick in that year's draft, and that was traded to Orlando, which is a interesting thing. I might break down a video later or like you know what I mean, another time. But that's a whole other story and how it connects to this kind of like timeline. It's really interesting how this is all so connected. Like Masai is weaving like this big puzzle, this big tapestry of different moves and different players. And I think it's always crucial to kind of look back and study the past to kind of see where we're going in the future, what kind of direction we've always kind of been in. And I think that really helps kind of center people's opinions. And that's why I just kind of like want to show that aspect of kind of history, maybe different angle and stuff. So it's really interesting. So obviously, Norm, we love him. He was great. Look at him there with the championship. He looks like a boss. Understand the grind. He was definitely about that. I loved his like spirit. He's a true Raptor in my books. Always will. But let's talk about the next trade. Then we have here Norman Powell for Gary Trent Jr. and Rodney Hood. And this was obviously the Tampa season. And we had to like kind of, we were looking to get younger, I think, just because we had OG. He was a bit younger because he was drafted 2 years after Norm and kind of came in younger, 20 years old. So obviously we wanted to kind of pull up a guy that's more in that kind of time frame because I think in that Tampa season we were looking at OG as maybe the new number one kind of guy that was going to kind of ascend and take that step. And I think we were kind of this is a move to kind of plan around OG to kind of secure him a little bit more help, I think, like in that kind of time frame in his year bubble. If he was to pop, we'd have Gary Trent Jr. ready to kind of go into that bubble with that core, Siakam, and then we would try to kind of finesse around how we need to build around OG if he were to pop as the number one option, which is still there's still a great chance for him to kind of do that. But let's look at both these guys because I think right now this is kind of where we've ended up in this whole trade saga. And it's really interesting. Obviously, his first year, he got traded at the trade deadline, which Masai doesn't usually do, but I think this was a different circumstance. Of we weren't in the playoffs, and I think he wanted Gary Trent Jr. in the system trying to learn the defense because obviously his defense is like a little bit, it wasn't like as great as it was like last season. So obviously they wanted him in the system trying to learn everything. And it's hard for guards to kind of play the style that Nick wants him to play. So it's really interesting. Obviously he came in. We played him a lot of minutes. We wanted to give him reps that year. Didn't well, he started like a bunch of games, and I think that's the role he wanted to look at. He wanted to get a starting role. He wanted an opportunity with minute shots, and I think he did fairly well. Like showing out in Tampa a little bit, showing some of the skills that he had as a shooter. Like his volume numbers have always been kind of great, even in like Portland, but they didn't give him as many shots because of Dame and Lillard, and we needed shooters because we have a lot of forwards. So that opportunity came to him, and I think he showed a great clip the first year, obviously a better clip the second year, a little more volume, a half shot more, but and then we have his 2 pointers, which I went through in his kind of extension series video and that whole extension series and the decision around both these guys. And I think this video kind of is in tandem with that, I think, because it's almost like a view of how we had Norm for a bunch of years and then trade him for Gary Trent. And then we had Patrick Patterson for a couple of years. He didn't pop, and I think we held him too long. I think if we trade him the season before, but I think we needed him, so it was like it wasn't really a down piece. And there's other trades, but that's gonna be in that bigger, deeper video. So I'm gonna talk about some other trades that have happened, but I think this one's more of a development timeline. We're looking at Gary Trent Jr.'s numbers to increase like they did with Norman Powell. That's how you gain assets. So we built up Norm into the player that he was. He wasn't really the guy that popped like Siakam and Van Vliet. So I think his timeline was also he's a year older than Siakam, so I think that kind of phased him out a little bit in the timeline of this current team that we have right now. Like we have the top, which I was talking about. We lock in our guys that are consistent horses, our lead horses, and then we have guys that have potential that can play and that will get better. And I think that's always what he's looking for. So I think this is where it comes in where I think OG might be on his last legs with us. I love OG. I want him to pop so bad. Like, I really do. Because I think the combination of his defense, man, he would be similar to a Kawhi. Obviously, a less scoring and efficient Kawhi, but it would be similar to that. And he continued to have that great defense. So I think with different guys on the team now, Scotty more developed. I think Pascal there, Precious a little bit more developed and kind of can help him with that role. I think can free him up to do a little bit more of the offense and maybe try out some of this. But I think if we don't see it go well, I think we could be looking at trading him maybe this year at the trade deadline. Maybe I don't know. I don't know what Masai really is planning with OG because I feel it's a really crucial year for him, obviously a really crucial year for Gary Trent Jr. But I think he hasn't had enough time with us. So give him another year or two, and then we'll definitely see that improvement like we've seen with OG. So let's go over OG now. So we drafted him in the 2027 or 2017 draft, sorry. And this was his first season. It was the season that we got swept by LeBron and just love. And I think this is what kind of playing him and starting him really hurt Dwayne Casey in the long run, and it was a big reason why he got fired. I think he was focusing too much on the bench mob and then having the starting lineup as like a separate kind of lethal kind of combination and not understanding that he needed to start forming his playoff lineups and start experimenting with some of that playoff stuff. And I think he was too steadfast and focused on his rigid kind of structure. If you can see, like, to be honest, like he was good. He was good. He was good. Like let's look at his offensive numbers here. See, you can see he's more of a a rim runner. He's more of a rim runner, but and he had like a bit of a three. I think we are working on it with him. Obviously, over the years, he's increased volume and still kept a decent clip. This year, obviously, he ventured out with more different three shots and kind of this has been a big component of his game, I think, over the years for us, that three ball. And it's kind of where it is. Like, it's perfect where it is. Like, I don't think it needs to go up or down or anywhere. I think, obviously, his clip will get more refined and he'll become a better 3-point shooter. But I think it's interesting how, like, I think this is the biggest one of the biggest parts on offense for him. I think this is bread and butter, and then we look to expand his kind of tool chest and see. He has those great rim running numbers, and I think like it breaks out with Pascal and Lowry used to hit them across like cross court and stuff like that. But I think if you look, we started to increase his mid range volume last year at the start of the year, and I think that was really not coming through at first. And then he kind of started to find his way a little bit, but I think then he got hurt with that hip pointer or something like that, and he went down for a bunch of games, as you can see. So I think he's shown the improvement. We increase his minutes, we increase his shots, and he's shown that great production and still continues to show that increased level of defense. His defense has obviously gotten better. His like steals have gotten better. So obviously he's improving. He's improving. His assists kind of are where they're at now. I think like until he improves his mid range, like we went through in our series expansion video, he's not gonna really get more points. So I think that's the point where I think Masai needs to make a decision. Obviously, we're probably gonna go into the season with him, but I think just like Patrick Patterson, we need to eventually make a decision, or else we might lose the most valuable part of him, like this kind of young potential window where we can sell someone to get two more first picks when he was just one first pick off greivis vasquez, which was just one piece of the Rudy Gay trade. So that's how you build out value in assets. You make good trades and you make gains, and you use your system that you've developed to kind of build up certain players. And I think obviously Gary Trent, he's still young. And OG's young too, but we've had him for so long. That's the thing. He's been in our system for so long. He's shown these great strides, but I think we might be looking at the kind of top side of where that is. And I think Masai wants to bring in maybe a different asset that can maybe start growing on the Scotty timeline. And and I think this is a really crucial year for OG. I love him. I like him to stay. I think in the end, he's more compatible with what we're trying to do as a team than Gary Trent Jr. Like, if I were to say who's the starting shooting guard, I would probably say OG can kind of play that Danny Green role and be like a Kawhi defender esque Danny role kind of role. So I see him as a championship 3-and-D guy like Danny Green was. But with Gary Trent, I think it's going to take a little bit more work. I think he's more of like a flamethrower off the bench, or maybe even like a Harden-esque stuff. But his the way he gets his points, I think it's too easy to defend against, because you can kind of see how he dictates the way he gets his shots, and it's kind of eventually people will plan against him and be able to kind of see that when he pulls that behind the back dribble, someone from behind is going to swipe it on him and he's going to lose it and stuff. I think obviously that turnover number might go up if we kind of put the ball more in his hands and kind of ask him to create shots for others and stuff. So it's really interesting to see. He needs to show that he can do that, right? I think this is about showing improvement. If you're not improving, Masai's not gonna plan for you in the future. I think that's the way he likes to build his team. Every spot's a potential to build a new asset and a new kind of great piece to kind of go with the future. And that's how you build championship, through trades. You get guys that can play the position but also have potential. Like we're giving an opportunity here. And I think that's where OG is too, where I think another team is maybe where his opportunity is kind of the way Gary Trent has came to us. And I think we need to hold him a little bit longer to kind of increase his value. Right now, I think OG is worth like 2 first-round picks. Gary Trent's probably maybe one with some extra like incentive on the other side, like a second to push it up. So that's where I'm saying, like, for him to kind of increase the value. And this is what we're doing, developing value. That's how you build championship teams. And I think that's how Masai is going to look at the situation. And I wanted to kind of like tie everything back to that kind of original OG trade that the Masai's too many starters. Here's his 4D chess play. Even though it was kind of a mess production wise, I think the information was legit in it. Obviously, the speed part was kind of a little bit off, and Malachi is probably maybe not the piece that the Indiana wants thrown in. But I think just as an understanding of Raptors fans to understand why it was happening, and like logistics, money wise, we could show that like the amounts and stuff, because it gets a little bit crazier if you add Birch into that trade. So it's really interesting. I wanted to kind of lay that out. A little housekeeping here. So I just wanted to say a couple things. I want to thank everyone that supported me, all my chat guys, NBA debate guys. seeing all that love and support's like really pushes me to maybe try to make this thing better and bigger. So I also love the comments, man, from anyone, really. I think if you disagree with my opinion, hey, state it. Use logic. Come at me with some logic, and I'd love for someone to change my mind on anything, anything. If you have a better take or something, tell me, man. Tell me. I love to chat back and forth. I think this can be a real place for people to kind of talk about like the more logistical things and maybe less of the drama and more of just like down to the logic. And I think that's mainly what my channel wants to focus on, like just kind of keeping everything anchored in reality a bit and not just say clickbait baity things and stuff like that for views and stuff. I think I just want to kind of take a different side of things and just really just talk about things that are really important to the Raptors and kind of show people the different unique mechanisms that Masai has built here and really everyone should see and kind of have for their own team, like maybe wants for their own team. Like I want to talk in terms of like that are simple enough that can be applied to maybe any team and any fan of any team, and you can understand what I'm saying with how I'm showing everything. And I want that to be like definitely a big point of a lot of my content. I want it to have a bunch of different functions, timelessness being one of them, but like having that kind of like being able to take in the information and being having it usable for any team, I think is really important for me. I want to thank everyone that supported me as we pump through the grind and develop our skills. Like OG and Gary Trent will continue to shine for our Raptors and stuff. All right, stay tuned. See you guys. Peace out.